Good morning, everyone. Just to introduce myself, I'm Tony Hart. I'm the chair of ABLE, the Acquired Brain Injury Forum in London. So a warm welcome to you all to ABLE's third webinar since COVID decided to descend upon us. Thank you all for coming along. As Gigi just said, we are recording this as many people have not been able to attend. And in order for this to work effectively and smoothly, we've asked you to switch off your videos and mute your sound. We will be saying to switch those back on again when we get a little bit more interactive and there's questions. So we'll be moving on to that, but this makes it much better for Sarah's presentation. I have to just say that we are missing running quarterly London conferences at Irwin Mitchell, but we are grateful to them for their ongoing support in enabling us to hold webinars. And let's hope it's not too long before we can return to face-to-face conferences again and all the networking and all the great stuff that goes on in London there. But for today, we're focusing on carers, and we're delighted to welcome Sara Challice. Sara is founder of Who Cares for Carers. She is a best-selling author, and her book Who Cares is a finalist in the People's Book Prize. Sara will give you a link for how to vote for that. Please do vote for it. Anyway, without further ado, and on behalf of us all, I would like to extend a very warm welcome to Sara Challice and hand over. Thank you, Sara.
Thank you so much for that introduction, Tony, and hello everybody. Thank you for coming today. I'm going to be sharing my story, and then I'm going to be sharing some slides. So if you do have a pen and paper, I'm going to be asking you some questions. And a lot of this stuff that I'm going to share with you, it's not just for carers, it's for lots of people, but this is really more tailored for you whilst you're caring for a loved one. And I don't know if you know this, but that in the UK alone, because of the pandemic, which only been 6 months, there's another 4.5 million more carers. So that number is on the rise quite dramatically. So with that, you may have remembered, and also just to let you know that the best part of 70% of us, whilst caring, because of the mental and physical stress, we end up falling ill. And that statistic needs to change. And that is why I am here today. So do you remember that great John Lennon quote, "Life happens whilst you're making other plans"? Well, let me take you back to 20 years ago. It's the 23rd of December, 1999. And I have just started a new job in London. And picture the scene. I am on the 26th floor of the NatWest Tower with huge views overlooking the city. I'm in the design team. I've come from Peterborough and I'm going to be living and working in London. This is where my life's going to start. So anyway, I've only been there a few days. I'm sat at my desk looking out the window. I'm going through my brand guidelines. When I look up, there he is, Neil. He's 6'4". Size and stature of a rugby player, cheeky smile, and he's our print supplier to our design team. He's brought us all wine in for Christmas. He looks straight across at me. "You all right there, Sara? Got a little something you might like?" Man after my own heart. Anyway, every now and again he takes us all out for lunch. Always enjoy his company. It's really funny. A little while later, he asks me out. We start dating. We're having a great time. He's really popular, got loads of mates, even captain of Hampstead Rugby Club. Anyway, we're going out, we're having a lovely time. And he actually tells me not long into our relationship, he thinks I'm the one. And I take a little bit more persuading. I'm not in any rush. I've not been in London long. But I do remember the day when we were driving over Tower Bridge together. And he was driving in his Merc. And I love Tower Bridge. And I just gazed across at him. And I just said this, "You know what, Neil? I could spend the rest of my life with you." Neil looked back at me. "And I could spend the rest of my life with you." When we come off that bridge, we were on this journey together. But during this time, he'd been having these kind of funny pins and needles down one side, really nasty headaches. Then one evening, he couldn't even get off the sofa. I ended up calling an ambulance, just, to check on him, make sure everything's okay. Got him to A&E, and they were checking him out, loads of tests through the night. Because he was on a drip, he was doing okay. He was sat up, he was talking, he was better. So I left in the early hours to go and get some shut-eye. And then the following morning, I get a call from the hospital to come in. They'd done a brain scan. Brain scan, blimey. Anyway, so I come in, and then there I see Neil on a ward of 6 men, and there he is sat up, looking perky. He looks great. And as I go and give him a big hug, the doctor comes round the corner with Neil's files on his arm, and he starts to draw the blue curtain around Neil's bed. Oh, so how's it going? Right, Mr. Challice, we've got the results from your brain scan. It looks like it's either a brain tumour or brain cancer. Brain tumour? God, Neil's so fit and well. Hasn't even been to the doctors in 14 years. Neil and I hugged each other tightly, and we felt the tears come. Don't worry, Neil. I'm here for you. We're on this journey together. So anyway, Neil had a long operation and then 6 months of chemotherapy. But by the end of that, he was given the all clear. Oh my God, we just rejoiced more in getting on with our lives than cracking open the champagne, you know. And the following Christmas that year, he proposed to me round at my mum and dad's on Christmas Day. And we weren't going to get any rush to, you know, get married because, you know, we don't need to. But only a few weeks after he'd proposed, he'd been having those funny side effects again. Brought his scan forward, and sadly his hunch was right. The tumour had returned. But this time it was inoperable. Neil looked straight at me and said this: "You don't have to marry me, Sarah." I came straight back. "Stuff the cancer, Neil. We will make the most of what we have." And we did. We brought that wedding forward, and we saw it as a celebration of life with all our friends and family. But 5 more years of chemotherapy resumed, and Neil was having falls. I'd given up my job in the city and my career to care for him full time because we were now using a wheelchair. And then also, Neil was, because he'd had a stroke as well, that really scuppered us. He was in hospital for a few months, and with that he had a feeding tube and he was unable to speak and being hoisted in and out of bed every day. My larger-than-life husband had been reduced to not much more than a body in a bed. Tragedy for both of us. Neil was slowly losing his life. And for me as a carer, I felt like I was losing mine. But you get on with it, don't you? That's what you do. And you know, I would describe it like this. My world, and this is maybe how you feel, my world become a much smaller place. And I found myself as solely responsible for Neil's life. Tall order for a man who's palliative care, and he'd be gone any time, and it's been going on now for years. And I would describe caring like this. Although Neil was the one with the brain tumour and he had the condition, I was waking up to brain cancer every day. May not have been in my head, but it affected every area of my life. And not only that, I was already grieving during those years. I was grieving for the loss of what we'd had together. We didn't have that anymore. Couldn't even have a decent conversation or go out for a drink like we used to. And grieving of what was about to happen at any time, the loss of Neil. But you know what? Do love a glass of Prosecco of an evening. What do you do to distract yourself from the stress and strain of caring? Some nights it's the glass, some nights it's the bottle. If I can get out for an evening, I can drink my own body weight in fizz. And if you see me out, I've always got a drink in my hand, having a great time. And on Facebook, I'm always like smiling, looking like I'm coping, because you want to look like you're doing okay, right? Put on a brave face. Or should I call it fake book? Anyway, I soldier on regardless, ignoring my own health, suppressing my emotions. And maybe this is something that you feel that you're doing, and just soldiering on regardless, just keeping going. But finally, the cracks start to show. First, I end up with a really nasty chest infection. Had it for months, antibiotics are not touching it. I end up then with an MRSA infection in both ears. Picked up from Neil after he'd been at the hospital. And so we're both going back and forth from hospital. We make a right pair. And then finally, my good friend Reagan comes to look after Neil for the day while I'm back at hospital again. Now, Reagan's my best mate. She's got long auburn hair. She's South African, real heart of gold. And when I come back from the hospital later that day, she greets me at the door, and this is exactly what she says. Well, I hope you got a pat of butter for your bottom, hey? Because I'm going to smack it. Why have you been keeping all this a secret? I haven't. You just get on with it, don't you? That's what you do. Well, I've only been here a day and I'm exhausted. No wonder you're ill. Haven't you spoken to family? Well, I have, Reagan. But you know what? They live miles away. They're getting on with their lives. And what many of us as carers find, if you're the one stepping up to the mark, others will step back and kind of leave you to it. Well, you can't keep going like this. Who else can you call? Ghostbusters? No. Well, you know what? I could ring Julia, head nurse at our local hospice where Neil goes to the day centre. I'll give her a call in the morning, see what she says. And that's what I do. I place that call. Hey, Julia. Yeah, Sarah. No, it's not about Neil. It's about me. Yeah. You know, I've not been well for a long time. Well, you know, I can't get out running like I used to. That is a way of getting rid of stress and getting exercise. I'm too ill to do that. I don't see my friends anymore. I feel quite isolated and cut off. Even given up drinking. And you know, that's a tall order for me. Hey? You've been expecting this call? Been caring for Neil for over 10 years now. Yeah. What's that? Emergency respite. So Neil can go into a local nursing home while I recover. That would be wonderful. Thank you, Julia. You'll call me later and let me know. Okay, bye. Julia had seen it coming. She could see I wasn't coping, and so had others. But I, as a carer at that time, thought I was coping when I wasn't. Anyway, a few days later, Neil is in the nursing home, and I am now back I'm taking myself down to a silent retreat of all places to get myself right, because I've not been well for a long time, and if I'm not fit and well for Neil, I can't continue to care, and I can't have him dying in a nursing home. I don't want that to be the end of our story. So as I've been sat there for a few days at this silent retreat, Gaia House in Devon, picture the scene. There's about 40 of us all sat cross-legged, all looking one way. We're all meditating for half an hour. And I've been feeling better. I've been getting better sleep because I'm having just peace and quiet. And I'm feeling more relaxed. My chest feels better. But as I meditate, I start to think of those family and certain friends who could have been there for me and Neil, but instead of offering their love and support, they've been judging me and causing me grief and kind of putting on me. And with that, I felt this anger come up inside me. And I felt my chest tighten in that split second and a vice-like grip around my neck. Oh my God. I had no idea that my negative thoughts were impacting my body so badly. I've got to stop thinking like this. Otherwise, I just won't get better. And this is what I thought about certain friends and family who were being quite negative and not being there for us. If they come to our front door again, great. If they never come to our front door again, great. I emotionally let them go. I didn't fall out with them, but I just emotionally let them go. I needed to focus on myself and Neil. But not only that, and this might be something that resonates with you, not only had I left myself last on the list, I wasn't even on the list. It was time for change. So, a few weeks later, I'm looking after Neil back at home, but this time I'm caring for myself. And I'm actually starting to feel better. I'm regaining my health. It's taking some time, and I'm actually starting to enjoy life. And a little while after that, as I continue caring for Neil and I are down at a local quiz night, INS, down the road here in Twickenham, Neuro Charity. And as I'm sat at the table, I've wheeled Neil in his wheelchair, there's a bald woman in her 60s comes running towards me. Sarah, hey, bet you don't recognise me. It's Carol. Where's her hair? You know, I've been caring for Jeff all these years. Well, he passed away a few months ago, and only 3 days after his funeral, I was diagnosed with cancer. My God, Carol, I'm so sorry. But get a load of this, Sarah. You know Tara, who's been caring for Daniel all these years, and he's got a brain tumour like Neil. Well, he passed earlier this year, and only 8 weeks after he passed, she was diagnosed with MS. She's already in a wheelchair, and their son is caring for her. It's like a ripple effect of illness just going through the family. That's appalling, Carol. And then Carol looks at me. But Sarah, you're doing all right. You've been caring for Neil for years. You look good. What are you doing differently? It was then that I realised, yes, I hadn't been doing so well. But then I'd made changes and found new ways and strategies to look after my own health so that I didn't fall ill again, so that I could continue to enjoy life. And with that, that's when I started to write, Who Cares? I'm just going to show you the cover. Who Cares? How to Care for Yourself whilst caring for a loved one. Because I think most of us don't, and we end up just leaving ourselves on the sideline. You just can't do that. So I'm just going to share my screen with you right here. I'm going to show you some slides and take you into that. So hopefully you can see that okay. Give me a shout if you can't, Tony. So what I did in that last year of Neil's life, I wrote my book, Who Cares for Carers? And that's been published and came out for Carers Week this June. And it was all the issues that carers face and more besides, because it was 13 years for me. And also I appeared on This Morning and in magazines and newspapers, getting that message out there. And if you do go to my website, www.whocares4carers.com, you just put your email and your name in there. There's 5 top tips every carer needs to know. And I'm also bringing out Carers Masterclass, a course for carers, which has been doing really well of late. So do pop that down and do come sign up and say hi. Now, here we go. So on Sunday, the 6th of September, 2015, this was after I'd taken Neil to the rugby at Twickenham, see England play Ireland. A great last day for us. Neil had another stroke and passed away in my arms in Westmead Hospital. But when he passed, I actually said thank you. I said thank you because I didn't want him suffering anymore. We had suffered for far too long. But this is what I would say to all here who are caring. Life is not about abstaining and enduring your life. It is still about enjoying, especially if you're caring for a loved one. And too many of us are abstaining, enduring, and trying to be all to everybody else. You just can't keep going like that. We do have to be there for ourselves. So you may have heard of that expression, you can't pour from an empty cup. So it's time to fill up. And I've got some things I want to share with you. Now, the first one is clarity. And what normally happens for carers when we start caring? Well, I think it's a mental and emotional minefield, isn't it, caring, especially if you're probably juggling work as well. You're trying to be all things to everybody. You're trying to be there for a loved one, making sure they survive and they get the best treatment so that they're as well looked after as possible. And it's almost like spinning plates, isn't it? Firefighting. You're trying to do so many things that clarity actually just goes out the window. But we do need clarity so that we can make better decisions. Not just for those around us, but for ourselves. And we are dealing with so very much as carers. And this is a short list, by the way. You've got pandemic at the top, of course, which is just another layer of stress for us all. But just a few there, you know, finances, form filling, family, maybe not being able to see them, your world becoming smaller, anxiety, district nurses. There's a lot involved, more than people realise. So be kind to yourself, recognise all that you do. So this is where the pen and paper comes handy, and you can start to think about this after this call as well. So my first question, which carers often bypass, of course, is how are you feeling? And we're going to go into detail about this. How are you feeling? Now first, how are you feeling mentally? There's 3 different layers here on how you're feeling, because thoughts are the language of the brain, and we have something like 70,000 thoughts a day. I reckon carers have something like 120,000 with everything that we're dealing with. But this is the thing, many of your thoughts will be on a loop. Things that you've been thinking about today, you thought yesterday, the day before. What thoughts are not serving you? A bit like me on my story, thinking about certain friends and family who were judging me and putting on me, even though they could see I wasn't doing so well. Recognize, or maybe jotting down, what kind of thoughts are coming up. It's good to be aware of those, especially any that are causing you grief and upset, because they do start to impact on your body as well. It's becoming conscious. And one of the things I do when I've noticed in the past, I put an elastic band around my wrist and I ping it when I catch myself having that particular thought again. Because you might be thinking it for a few seconds, and before you know it, you've been thinking about it for a whole hour. Doesn't make for a good day, does it? And then how are you feeling emotionally? Whereas thoughts are the language of the brain, emotions are the language of. And often for carers, we suppress our emotions, as I did. But that's a great way of then falling ill. It is really important to get into grips with your emotions, actually feel with them. And if it means crying, shouting, screaming, you know, even up in your bedroom, whether do so, getting at those emotions up and out. And they can be signals. They're not bad things. They let us know if something is good or bad, or something we might need to say or do something different. Notice how these emotions make you feel. I think, and they, you know, if you're having negative emotions like anger, frustration, they are normal for carers. I had all of those. And noticing how they make you feel. And also, your heart holds neurons. This is great research out there with the Heart Math Institute in the States, that as your brain holds neurons, so does your heart. So really important to check in with your heart. You know, your brain sometimes will just spit out the wrong answers to try and be there for everybody else. But actually, if you go to your heart and sit quietly and connecting with your heart, you already know the answers, and they're the real answers. And that's what I would do. I connect in with my heart center. Really powerful. And finally, how are you feeling physically? As I said before, about 70% of carers fall ill, mentally or physically. And the trouble is, of course, your thoughts and feelings, if they go unchecked, they end up impacting the body. And the trouble is, and I found this for me, continued stress suppresses your immune system, something that we need to have as strong as possible at the moment. So it's about releasing any tension and looking after your own health. And of course, many of us actually cancel our own appointments. And I know that many people's appointments, hospitals and doctors, have been cancelled anyway because of what's going on, which is not a good thing. So, ways to gain clarity so that you can check in with yourself on a regular basis to keep yourself in check and you don't find yourself in that crisis point, is you could either meet with a good friend once a week. Now, if you're not able to do it face to face because of everything that is happening, social distancing, you could do it in person or over the phone, Zoom or Skype. There's lots of ways that we can do that now, which is amazing. And what I did after I'd come back and I was looking after Neil and regaining my health, I connected in with my neighbour, Nadia, next door. She's a good friend of mine as well. She's also a carer. And we'd meet, have a cup of tea at the end of each week on a Sunday evening, and we'd ask each other, how have you been? Is it been a better week or a worse week? What's come up that's been any issues? What could you do differently? Can you control it? Because you can't control everything. But in doing that, I didn't reach crisis point again. And actually brainstorming together, it made a big difference for us. We were coming up with different ideas. And if you don't want to do that, or you want to do journaling as well, journaling is really powerful. If you've not done it before, I still journal today, and another carer told me how to journal. And it really is a fancy name for, obviously, a pen and a notepad. And what I would do, I would write down the issues, things that are coming up, things that are troubling me. And then I'd almost give myself a coaching session. So because what it does is it takes all those thoughts out from your head onto paper, and it helps you to start to work out, well, what can I do about that? And then I'd actually start to write out anything positive that I could control, and I'd underline it so that if I look back, I can see what I need to do immediately. It would always be these positive, reinforcing ideas that could really help and benefit. Really powerful, more than you realise. Even just try it. You could do it every night or just once a week or whenever you need to when something's coming up. Because becoming more aware of our thoughts and feelings can help us guide us to making better decisions. Because if you're feeling in a better place, you'll be feel stronger to cope with what's going on and make sure you're making the right decisions. And this is a big one for carers. Self-care is not selfish. And when I talk about self-care, this is not just about brushing your teeth or taking a shower. It's also about enriching your life, having and doing the things that make you feel more happy and fulfilled, and enjoying pursuits that put a smile on your face, even make you feel excited. Just these small daily pleasures are really important, because it's really important that you look after you, and also enjoy at least some of every day for all of us. Now, self-care is about enriching your life. So a few questions here, and you could start to write down lists on these to kind of spur you on through the days if you're having, difficult times. So what does put a smile on your face? And for everybody here, it will be a different thing, thinking of a particular happy memory, a previous holiday. Maybe it's a favorite program. Comedy programs always make me laugh. Knowing that your love makes such a huge difference to family. There's all sorts of things. It might just seeing the sunshine in the morning. But what puts a smile on your face? Maybe even making a list of those. What makes you happy? And then think also about enriching your life. What makes you feel good? It's slightly different. So what makes you feel good? And we talked about having a hot shower. Maybe a good night's sleep, or having a go at some stretches, simple yoga exercises you can get free on YouTube. Maybe just buying a piece of cake and enjoying it. There's nothing wrong with that. Just simple pleasures, but what makes you feel good? It might be putting the heating on, which is, kind of how I'm feeling these days with the autumn. Just going for a walk in nature. Does that make you feel good? Because these are really important things, and maybe just making a list of those, and maybe doing some more of those, more than you have been at present. And finally, what positive habits could you add to each day to give yourself care? Because you are very important, and not only are you caring for yourself, but you're caring for another, so you've got to be there for you. And I put putting on makeup. I'm sure Tony doesn't do this, but putting on makeup is quite an interesting one, only if you want to, of course. But one of my friends, if she doesn't put a brush through her hair and put makeup on, first thing in the morning, she then doesn't make, it's kind of a domino effect. She then doesn't make lunch for herself, and she doesn't actually look after herself for the rest of the day. It is actually a knock-on effect. So whatever that might be for you, when you get up in the morning, maybe making a healthy breakfast, maybe going for a quick walk around the block and getting some long, deep breaths. Deep breathing exercises are very powerful, releasing stress and calming the body. So doing these small, simple things, maybe being a bit more honest with a few folk. If family are asking how you're doing, you're finally honest, because often I wasn't honest. It's good to just let them know. And even ensuring you speak to a good friend or family member every day, so that you don't feel so cut off or isolated. And then this is the last one for this, is what could you do with maybe your loved one that you could do together, something that you could enjoy. Now, remember I said Neil was like almost a body in a bed, so we were very, very limited. But I would put on podcasts or radio, I would read to Neil, or we'd listen to Audible, if you've not heard of Audible, where you just listen to books, listen to stories, and I would almost wedge myself in sideways into his hospital bed with the cot sides up, and we'd sit and relax and enjoy that together. So thinking about those different things that you could do together. And I'd always take him down to Bushy Park as well, actually, in his wheelchair, and push him around Woodland Gardens because it's all flat, because he was about 17 stone. And yeah, it was wheelchair. It was easy to get the wheelchair around, and it was beautiful. He always put his thumb up for that. And this is a great quote from Buddha. You yourself, more than anybody in the entire universe, deserves your love and affection. And it really does. So never leave yourself behind. Be there for you. Really important. And now I want to talk to you about telomeres. And telomeres tell a lot. And if you've never heard of a telomere, which I think the majority of us that is, telomeres are at the end of your DNA strand. They're almost like the glue at the end of a shoestring. And when you are first born, your telomere lengths are a nice long length. But as you go through life, they start to shorten. And with that, also with stress, they can shorten further. And there's the Nobel Prize winner, Elizabeth Blackburn, and her team did some great research recently on telomere lengths. And she took a group of caregivers, as they're called in the States, caregivers of these mothers caring for chronically or very, very sick children. And they looked at the telomeres, these benchmarkers in the body of these mothers, to see if they'd changed due to that stress of caring. And their shocking results were that for these mothers, for some of these carers, their telomere length had shortened by up to 10 years. That caring, the stress, the mental and physical stress of that, had shortened their longevity. Appalling. But within this research, there was hope. Some of these mothers' telomere lengths were still the nice long length that they should be. So they invited these mothers in and they interviewed them and asked them what were they doing differently. And these mothers said, yes, I'm caring for maybe a sick or dying child, but there is only so much I can do. As I give my love and my time to my child and to the family, I also look after myself, make sure I have regular breaks, do what I need to do, push back so that I can have quality time for myself. That keeps my strength up. And also, of course, it kept them, their telomere length the right length and their longevity. So very interesting. So if you knew, and maybe you're going through a very stressful time at the moment, but if you feel that stress and maybe knew that your telomere length might have been shortened, what would you do differently to just kind of lengthen that again? And telomere lengths can actually lengthen again. Through meditation, actually, they can lengthen. Because challenges, how difficult they are here to help us evolve and to grow. So rise to the challenge. It's kind of that, it's one of the chapters in my book, actually, rise to the challenge. What are you learning from this? Say to yourself, there's only so much I can do. What things do I need to do now? Can't control everything, but what simple things could you do now to keep your health in check and be there for your loved ones, but be there for yourself? So yes, what do you need to do to look after your own health? And then I'm just going to share with you a very quick story about the bee and the fly. Now, I want you to picture the scene in a beautiful park, or it could be your garden. But as you walk through that park, for example, you've got beautiful flowers around you. Who do you think is going to be buzzing on top of those flowers? But a bee. And that bee is going to be on all those flowers. And when it's finished buzzing, collecting its pollen, the nectar from one particular flower, it will go to another flower and to another flower. Its focus is on the flower and it will continue on around. And when it's exhausted that area, what does it do? It buzzes off and it will find more flowers because that is its focus. That's what it focuses on. Now, if you're walking through that park and you see a load of rubbish strewn in the corner, guess who's going to be sat on top? Probably a few more than that, actually. It's flies, because that's what they focus on. They focus on decaying matter. So that's what they focus on. And once they've exhausted that, they'll go find more to focus on, because that's what they focus on. So I'm going to take you back to the picture of the flowers, actually, because that's just an awful picture. So when you're in that park and you see those beautiful flowers and then you see the rubbish, which one are you focusing on? You know, some of us go, oh my God, look at that, all that rubbish. And then you start focusing on, or are you looking at the beautiful flowers? Because obviously when we're caring, we're having to focus on a lot of awfulness, a lot of things that we have to deal with. But it doesn't make for a great life or a great day. And for example, for myself, when I took Neil out for a meal years ago, he hadn't been ill long, and we were out with this other couple, Kev and Julia, and as we were sat having a meal and enjoying it, Neil was on chemotherapy, and as we were chatting with them, they wanted to know how Neil was, and because I've been at the hospital, of course, that makes me an expert, doesn't it? And so I start telling them all about Neil's condition, all about glioblastomas, all about the treatment and the chemotherapy. Neil then taps me on the shoulder. Can we talk about something else? I've come out to have a good time. I laughed. I said, I'm so sorry, Neil. He was right. We would take him all the time about the illness. And yes, it's good to talk about it, but not all the time. I think it bores my friends silly. I think I must have done at times. It's really good to focus on the good stuff. And we still have things to be thankful for. I know it's challenging times at present, but be a bee if you can, and focus on the flowers in your life, the good things. Focus on the good stuff, because where attention goes, energy flows. And one of the things I would do, you could try this as well, if I've had a hard day, or you could do it regularly. When I get into bed, I have a pen and paper next to me, and I write down 5 good things that I was thankful for that day. And actually I then just kind of run my day, and it might be just going out for a walk, it might be just seeing a friend, or the paid carer coming in and helping us and just being lovely. But I'd start to write down the 5 good things, and with that it put me in a better frame of mind. I was focusing on the good stuff, and other carers have found that's been really beneficial as well. 5 good things when you get into bed. You could try it. It makes you feel in a better place. And finally, you are amazing. Because if you're caring for a loved one, not everybody can do what you do. Many walk. I've spoken to those who've been dealt that card of caring, and they've decided not to be there for their loved ones, but to continue caring, especially during these times, which are very challenging, shows dedication, resilience, and above all, love. So be kind to yourself. Recognize all that you do. And actually, if you were to write a list now of all that you do, I think you'd be quite surprised. Now, a number of years ago, I was at the Houses of Parliament. I gave a talk about caring for Neil. Neil was there in his wheelchair with me. And after I'd spoken, it was about raising awareness of brain tumours with the Brain Tumour Charity, actually. Then a neurosurgeon got up and he spoke. And he said he was often asked what was the best criteria for surviving a brain tumour. Now, I stood there with my arms folded thinking, oh, probably irinotecan, temozolomide, latest chemo. No, his answer surprised us all. He said the best criteria for surviving a brain tumour was marital status. And I loved what he had to say. Because imagine if you're the one who's fallen ill and you're seriously ill. If you have somebody there fighting your coaching, being there for you, being an emotional and physical rock, that is a huge boost. But not only that, you still have a reason to live, the love of another. And I don't believe that you need to have that marital status, but I think as a carer, if you're doing that, you're being that emotional and physical rock. Not only does it give a loved one a better quality of life, it can often extend their longevity. And I know that my caring and my love kept Neil alive for years longer, because when I put him into that hospice for a week's break, he would go downhill rapidly. But when I got him home with my love and support, hugging him every day, he clearly improved and it kept him going. So recognize all that you do and really be there for you at the same time, because you are amazing. So these are 3 calls to action for today. Regularly check in with yourself, however that may be, with a friend, over Zoom, journaling, maybe just on a Sunday evening, starting to jot things down. Become aware of what's going on. I haven't gone into detail about this, but taking regular breaks. Difficult, I know, especially with everything that's going on. But I'm even talking about breaks between chores. So, because if you just get up and it's a sea of chores every day, you know, I'll just do this, I'll just do that, you'll just fall into bed cream crackered. And that doesn't make for a good day, does it? So maybe just having 10 minutes here or half an hour there between chores and sitting down and actually writing down, well, what could I do? You know, go buy yourself that magazine, read a book, go for a walk, speak to a friend on the phone, I'm going to do that, and jotting those lists down, you know, what you could do during those spare moments. Because pushing back, it will just actually not only help you recoup. A good friend of mine said, getting into the outside space, she said, help to deal with the inside space. And that's what I did on that silent retreat. Got me into that inside space, made me recognize all that was happening. Really good. And then give yourself permission to do one thing for yourself each day, however small or big, to enrich your life. And finally, I'm just going to actually just quickly show you Carers Masterclass. I'm not going to go into big detail about this. This is what I teach. I've been teaching at a Richmond Carers Centre, and it's going to be an online class. So if you do want to just sign up to my website once it's ready, I just give a monthly newsletter and videos. I will let you know more about that, and it will be online, so you can do it from the comfort of your own home. I noticed that there were 5 key areas of my life and how I overcame, and then I've got case studies and all sorts of things to share with you, and it's made a huge impact on the carers and great testimonial, so I'm really pleased with that. And it's about empowering you. It's because often we go, oh well, this is it, this is how my life is. No, there's always room for improvement. There's things that we can change to help look after our own health whilst we're caring. I dive deep. I'm giving solutions, personal experience, not just mine, but case studies and transformations. Sometimes the smallest of tweaks makes the biggest of difference. And this will also help to inspire you to keep you going, motivated, whilst keeping a check on your health. And a lot of what you'll learn, you'll use for the rest of your life. I know, because I do, and the carers who've been on it do. And as I said, I delivered it at Carers Richmond Centre. And finally, I'm just going to give you a sign off here, which is whocaresforcarers.com. That's my website. If you want to just join, if you're on Facebook, it's wellbeing, number 4, wellbeing for carers, no space. If you want to jot that down and just join that, because anything else that comes up that I think is relevant for carers, I also post there as well, or any talks or anything that's going to be beneficial, like the Carers Festival that happened recently. So thank you for listening to that. I'm going to just stop sharing my screen. There we go. And there we go. And so if you do have any questions, thank you. Tony's come into play. Hi, Tony.
Hi, Sarah. I think I'd just like to ask everybody, well, I'd like to say thank you so much, first of all, for that incredible presentation. And I would just like to ask everybody to just sit quietly for a minute and just reflect and absorb what Sarah's talked about before we carry on, because it doesn't feel right to me to just go launching into a bunch of questions. So I'd just like to take a minute and just reflect. Let's just be at one with ourselves for a moment and think about what Sarah's talked about, and then we'll come back.
Thank you. And yeah, like I say, even after this, I asked a lot of deep questions, and you know, the carers found this very difficult, actually asking yourself those questions. How am I feeling? Because we don't ask ourselves. So if you do have time after this to sit quietly, start to ask yourself those questions. It's very powerful because it will help to gain clarity on what is going on for you. Everybody's different here. Everybody's unique, and the person they care for is unique, the dynamics, the setup. So do think about, you know, how you're feeling, what thoughts are coming up. And even those lists, if you start to make them, it starts to put it in action, actually. That's what I found anyway.
So I was writing lots of stuff down there, lots of things that were just kind of, lots of things kind of came out as, oh, this is the real key point, and then that real key point became something else, superseded that and took over. So I will be using up a lot of A4 paper, I think, here in the southeast. But I think there was a lot of stuff there: clarity, layers of stress, self, your own well-being. I love where attention goes, energy flows. In the team that I work in, we have introduced a positive thought for the day, and I can just, a lot of the team are here, most of them are here. They're all going to nick that one. That's going to be used tomorrow morning, I'm sure. But I think that is great. We have a number of questions already, so I think in fairness to people who have asked questions in advance, I'd like to just ask those first, Sarah, if that's okay, and then ask people to unmute and show their videos if they want to ask a question. That way it keeps it a little bit more controlled, otherwise we're going to end up with a million postage stamps on a little laptop. So okay, Sarah, so the first question somebody else was, I'd like a mentor.
Okay.
That comes up quite a lot, I think, with people. So I don't know, I'm sure you must have been asked this before in the past.
It's kind of funny actually, but I haven't been asked it in the past, although I've been teaching the course and take Mind Body Spirit group for neurotherapy. I haven't been asked that. With the Carers Masterclass, I will be giving a one-to-one call, that's part of it, and a closed Facebook group. That will be part of it as well. So even if you go to my Facebook page, Wellbeing for Carers #4, you can ask me a question in there, or you can even contact me via my website. So if there is anything that's coming up, and if I think it's powerful enough and I think it's something I could share, a story coming from me, of course, not their personal, whatever's going on for them, I create videos, so I'll stick a video on there, you know, answering that, or even just one-to-one, I can answer that as well. So yeah, so I will be doing live Zoom calls and stuff for this Carers Masterclass. So yeah, you can do that. One of the great websites that I love as well is Carers UK. If you've not been on there before, they're very proactive. I think they're kind of my top really go-to when I've needed anything. And there's a lot of detail on there. And I've been involved with them recently as well. I was at their AGM last week reading from the book, so which is great. Lots going on with them, Carers Festival and stuff. So I don't know if you've got any other thoughts on mentoring, Tony.
Yeah, there are a number of websites around the sort of different places, different organisations in different parts of the UK. You know, all of the headways work very differently. It's always worth contacting your local headway to see where they might be able to signpost or what they might be able to offer. So there's a lot of stuff out there. It's not always easy to find. I think what we're planning to do is to email any links we've got to everybody who's attended to today's webinar, rather than trying to sort of post them in the chat box now. I think that might be a bit messy, so we will send information out to people. So yeah. There are
say as well within the book, who cares, it's one of those kind of books you can dip in and out of. You don't have to read it cover to cover, because I know carers don't have the time. So lots of issues that come up for you, they're probably the solutions or ideas and examples are in there with a lot of stories. So you can just go to just inside, it's like 30 short, sharp chapters in there. So and I even ask questions at the beginning of that, so that's quite a good sounding board at first as well, just like what did she do different, what happened, what came up. So just another idea there when you're at home, because we're all stuck at home, as it were. Yeah
No, great, thank you for that. Another question was, is there any training or literature available for carers to help deal with issues concerning the frustration and anger caused by acquired brain injury?
The anger and you know, these are very. Do you mean about the person who's fallen ill with, or has the brain injury?
Well, it looks as though the reading is about from the carer's perspective. How do you manage somebody's frustration and anger?
How do you deal with your frustration and anger?
How do you deal with the frustration and anger of the person who has the brain injury? So they may be angry with you. I know you mentioned to me about a story that you had with Neil when there was some anger issues. Are you comfortable sharing that?
Yes, absolutely. No, Neil was very placid. I was very lucky, but there were times when, even though he couldn't speak, he'd blurt things out if he hadn't spoken for months. So, for example, Neil actually, I've been caring for him for years. I was feeding him chocolate mousse in his bed, and he just said, "I hate you," out of the blue. And of course, I just like record. I was shocked, because I'd given up everything pretty much to care for him for years, and it's almost like it's been slapped in your face. I'm like, it's like a thankless task, isn't it? Let's be honest. And Neil not only now had a brain tumor, and he was in this bed, he also had an angry wife on top of that as well. I kind of jest, but at the time I said, "My God, Neil, have you got any idea what I do for you every day for years?" And what I realized was, Neil didn't hate me. And even what I did is I took myself off to bed that night. I actually cried in bed, sat up, and I did start to think about it. And I thought, you know what? Neil doesn't hate me. He hates the situation. He knows he's a burden. He's so frustrated. That's all that came out, because I wanted him to speak more, but he couldn't because of his brain injury from all the stress over the years from chemo and the brain tumors that he'd had. And the next morning when I went down, I said, "You know what, Neil, I love you and I always will." And I realized it was unconditional love. And it's a big one. And I don't know about any of you here. For me, from that point forward, I recognized, and this is very powerful, it was unconditional love for Neil. I thought, if he says anything like that again, it really is the disease, it's the brain tumor that's speaking in his frustration. Neil was, as I've described it, in the cul-de-sac of life. The only way out for him was death, basically. And that's a very dark place to be. So yeah, I try not to take it personally. Easier said than done, I know. In the 4 Agreements, this great book that I read, and one of those agreements is, don't take anything personally. It's a really hard one, but it's really coming from somebody else and their point of view. If you're giving your love and you're doing your best, that's all you can do. So recognize all that you do, and actually maybe vocalize back to them if they're angry and they're taking it out on you. Got a friend who's caring at the moment. Her daughter's very abusive with her. And I said, and she's got a personality disorder. It's very unpleasant. And, I said, that's her illness, but you do need to draw a line and actually vocalize back. Actually, I'm doing my best, but if you upset me and cause me grief, that means I've got to keep my distance, and I can't come closer to you and give my love like I'd like to. So it's actually vocalizing, doing a bit of straight talking with them. I know it's a difficult one, though. Thank you, Tony.
Sarah, can you just remind us all again how many years you were caring for Neil?
It was 13 in the end. Yeah, it was the last 4 years. It was nursing, 24/7 nursing care. But yeah, it was, for everybody here, it would be slightly different. At first you might just be an emotional rock more so. But as the years went on for me, it became more and more and more physical. So everybody here will be dealing with something slightly different degrees of that.
I once heard somebody refer to it as being an emotional rock to start with and an emotional wreck at the end.
Like that.
Which is probably very accurate, I can imagine. And without the sort of interventions of giving yourself permission to look after yourself, you can easily see how that can become the dominating sort of factor.
Massively. So that's a really great one, actually, Tony. Love that, emotional wreck. That's exactly. I was floored. You've got no idea what you're letting yourself in for whilst you're caring. So never undervalue all that you do and what you've stepped up to do. It's probably the hardest thing you'll ever do. It certainly is for me.
Yeah. Okay, we have another question here, and then we can open it out to other people. How do you approach the subject of respite care when your loved one is resistant to it?
That's a really difficult one. I talk about that in the book as well. Yes, a lot of carers, even if they are offered respite, will turn it down. I did as well, and I know of others, I've spoken to them, but you need a break and you need the respite. There's no way out of that, really. You need time for yourself. you're not only recouping and resting, but like I said before, you can gain clarity when you're away from the situation. You can start to think better. You can start to get some good night's sleep, quality sleep. I would say you build it up. If they're resistant, look, that you're their advanced carer. They feel vulnerable if you're not there, because you're there to help them survive. So they're going to do all they can to keep you there as much as possible. And if it means blackmail, makes you feel guilty, so be it, because they need to survive. But you just need to recognize that. So, for example, there's one man, he needed a heart operation, been caring for his wife for years, and he turned it down to have that heart operation because his wife would wail. As soon as he left the house, she'd actually wail, because that codependency had started to kick in for them, which meant then we kind of know what's probably going to happen in the long run for that. If he's not going to be taking care of his own life, she's going to end up, he's not going to be there anymore. We have no choice. So there is that codependency for each other. They become reliant on you. So it's as uncomfortable as it is, it's trying to, just maybe a short break from them. Maybe it's an hour, maybe it's 2 hours. Elongating that, making it half a day, making it a day before you maybe say, right, the hospice, for example, they can look after you for a week, or it may be a weekend, or getting friends and family involved so that you can just get yourself away so that you can have that break, but it does them good as well. Otherwise, that's it. Your life becomes much, much smaller, and it's not healthy. That codependency is not healthy. And what I did after Neil was very shouty, after I put him in for respite one particular time, which really upset me, I rang Neil's sister and I said, I've rang him, he's shouted down the phone and he's hung up on me. And I felt dreadful. I felt guilty. And I said, I'm not going to ring again this week, because otherwise I can't have a break. You're thinking about that. So I got his sister instead to ring every day. And so that's what she did. And with that, I had that break, and it kind of just broke that chain a bit, so I could, you're not tethered emotionally so much. Not easy, I know.
No, I'm sure that's resonated with a lot of people attending here. Okay, so those were the questions that we had when people registered. I'm guessing there may be a number of questions that may come up from delegates who are attending. So there's a little bar along the top, if people are not familiar with this, that's got a little hand, and you can raise your hand if you want to ask a question, and then you can unmute and stick your video on, or you don't have to stick your video on if you don't want to, but obviously you'll need to unmute if you want to ask a question. So is there anybody who would like to ask a question? Don't be shy.
Ali's got a camera on. Are you all right there, Ali? Did you want to ask a question? Ali Basley?
No, I'm fine.
No, okay.
Anybody want to ask anything? Okay, can I just ask, Sarah, a lot of people, when they're going through such a difficult time, as the person who's had the brain tumor or the acquired brain injury, however that may be, there's obviously understandably an awful lot of focus on them. So it starts from the moment that they have their accident or whatever it is, and then they end up in hospital, and then everything is about them.
Yes.
And it's very easy to see how, for that person, everything then does just become about them.
Yes.
And it can almost kind of provoke a kind of what comes across as a selfish kind of attitude, and that can be, I think, really difficult for carers to cope with, when it's like, this isn't all about you, this is about me as well, which I think is what you've really talked us through really well. But how difficult would you say over 13 years was it? I know we've talked before this webinar, and this the stuff that you've sort of talked about, but how difficult was it for you to be able to manage that kind of, I suppose, almost narcissistic type of.
Because Neil got used to that kind of attention, of course. You know, I was told he's got brain tumor, but it was, you know, there was a lot of attention on Neil. He had a lot of friends, and you know, hundreds of friends. I mean, he's very, very popular. So it was all about Neil. I do remember, whether it's a female, I will say this, that some people will resonate with this. Right at the beginning, when Neil had fallen ill, I kind of moved into this house where I am now with Neil. You know, we'd only been seeing each other 6 weeks when he fell ill, believe it or not. But I'd known him like 18 months at that time. And as I was here caring, you know, being here for him, and he was fine. He was just going for, you know, doctors and hospital appointments. One of his good friends said, "Oh, are you here now, being here for Neil, caring for Neil?" And I said, "Well, yeah, I'm here." I mean, this is a friend who'd known him 20 years. He goes, "Oh, good, good," as if that was my role now. And I thought, I was really quite shocked, and it was almost that perception of, oh, that's the woman, she'll do it. I certainly felt that's quite, it kind of felt to me, and I thought, hang on a minute, I'm very happy to help and I'm here, but it's not all about me now stepping in because I've just started seeing Neil. I found that, you know, frustrating and a little annoying, actually. And actually, caring out of obligation and caring out of love are two very different things. It's very different energy. I was quite happy to be there for Neil. I said, you know, get better, Neil. I'm here for you. See, not realizing what that would mean for me over the next 13 years. But yeah, it's a tricky one. And when I did fall ill, I fell ill a few times over those 13 years. It's a long time. I had middle ear infections as well. That's obviously where my weak chink is from the stress. Neil wasn't particularly fussed about the pain and the grief I was going through, even though I was going back and forth from hospital. He wasn't particularly interested in my illness. And I think about a lady called Daphne, actually, who I know through charity. When her husband, he had a neuro condition, she then fell ill with cancer while she was caring for him. They were both in their 70s. I'm going to say this. He said, "You and that bloody chemo," it's what he said to her. I mean, we both laughed about it because it's so bad, it's funny. It's like, how dare you be ill? It's me who's ill. It's almost, but it's because people have got into those roles. Oh, this is me. And actually, I say to people, even if you've got an illness or a condition, you're not that illness, you're not that condition. And you are not just a carer, you are so much more. In a caring role at present, but you are a whole lot more besides. So I think I think I've answered a few things on the levels there. Yeah, it's a tricky one, but anyway.
No, thank you for that. I can see a little yellow hand up, and it's Trisha. Trisha, if you'd like to unmute and ask a question, if you want to put your video on, please feel free. Oh, you're muted. You're still muted.
Oh, hi.
That's it.
I just wanted a question about the experience of a carer caring for someone with an acquired brain injury in relation to a carer of someone who hasn't had an acquired brain injury. Is there different barriers and support needs that you think that are specific to a carer caring for someone with an acquired brain injury? Or do you think it's the same kind of experience with anyone so caring for someone who's an older person or with a physical disability, specific MS or something like that?
Yeah, it's a good question, actually, Patricia. I think when I wrote the book and the course, I wrote it and I delivered it to a whole load of carers who were caring for completely different people. So and there were different ages. So one carer, she was 30. Another lady was in her 70s. One was caring for somebody with mental health problems and alcoholic, and the 70-year-old, she was caring for a husband who had bowel cancer. So, and they were all different. So, and that's what I wanted to check. And the answer was, it doesn't matter. That's what with this, it encompasses all, because we're all human beings, doing our best, caring for a loved one. So and there will be certain conditions no doubt about it. So, for example, with brain tumours and also brain injury can change somebody's personality. We all know that. And that won't be the same. Well, it could be, even if it's an elderly person who suddenly ends up with a neuro condition. And actually, Neil's, as the years went on, he was really confident. He oozed confidence. He could just hold court at bar, no probs, you know, speaking in front of folk. By the end of it, he was almost like a little hermit. He, you know, before the stroke even, he was almost like a hibernating bear. I'd get him out to eat, and then he'd want to be in the company. He'd become quite introvert because of everything that had happened for him. And also another carer said to me, have you noticed that Neil's not quite the same as he was? And it kind of upset me, and it implied that Neil was a broken man, what some of you might be experiencing, that kind of thing, that they're broken. Actually, she was right. That's why it really gutted me when she asked me that question, because Neil in some ways was broken in that respect. You know, he's joie de vivre, but everything, it ground him down. And so you're maybe going to notice that. So and it depends on the degree of difficulty for the person you're caring for. It will depend on what is coming up for you as a challenge. There's always going to be some kind of challenges, whoever you're caring for. And it's also their journey, because you can lead a horse to water. I juice for Neil, so I'd call it the purple-headed nasty. Sorry, that's what I called it, and it had froth on top, and it was beetroot juice, which is great for micronutrients in the brain, which I've done research and been on talks for. So really interesting. So poor old Neil, he just wanted a cup of tea and some biscuits, and there I was giving him half a pint of purple juice. I'm horrible, aren't I? But there's lots of things that you can do to help improve one's life. And I will say this again, it's difficult maybe with brain injuries, but you never know, because the brain is it's a powerful thing, and it can help, it can heal. You just never know. Never give up hope. Depending on the situation, I actually took Neil to see a doctor, a homeopath, Dr. Innes, down in St Margaret's. And even though he was a homeopath, he looked at alternative medicines, and he'd had head cancer himself, and he was a GP. Nothing had worked for him. He then put an advert in the back of a medical journal, and people coming to him with all these alternative therapies, and he healed from them, not from the drugs from the hospital. So that's where he was. He prescribed Neil, I'm trying to remember what it was called now, but I can remember it and give you the link. And for 6 weeks, Neil took this tablet, and it was like Neil woke up. Something healed in his brain, and they weren't expensive. There were supplements. In fact, it literally is cytosine B, and B for brain. And it actually, all it was condensed lamb's brain with a nice Chianti. So it's body, milky fluid into Neil's tube. But I kid you not, 6 weeks later, because it obviously something had happened, because nothing else had changed, Neil just swiveled his head. I went, "Morning, chicken," one morning. He swiveled his head and, "Don't call me chicken." And I burst out. I went, "Oh my God." And something had healed in his brain from the supplements. I know it's difficult with brain injuries and stuff, because it is what it is. But, it's all worth trying these things. You just don't know. You just don't know.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Sarah, can I ask, in terms of hospitals and the role that they play, I wonder sometimes whether people are not really offered the sort of signposting to the support that they need at the time when they need it. I kind of often feel that people kind of get supported a little bit along the way, and then as people are reaching the discharge point, it's kind of pretty much, well, you're kind of on your own now. Now they may get signposted to a community neuro team or something like that.
Yes.
We all know, or most of us probably know, that time bound doesn't last for that long, and then it's the same scenario very often after that. Now I appreciate there's probably a number of people here who are from Headways and obviously we play a role, but I'm not always sure that that support is there in the right way at the right time. But I'm just wondering what your kind of experience or observations are on that.
Yeah, I mean, it took years to find the support for myself and for Neil over those years. I put the feelers out, and there's a big thing. You know, if you don't accept behind closed doors that that's all there is. There is great work being done in the community, and even though, say for example, carer centres have had to close their doors at present, they've still got lots going on. I think about Richmond Carer Centre was doing a mindfulness online course. You know, a lot of things were online, I know, but there's still good work being done. And it took me a while, and I was asking district nurses. Neil would have a district nurse coming in, checking on Neil. You might have the same. Paid carers, I'd be asking them, you know, you may be using, this is a whole other bag of trouble actually, is paid carers into your home. You might be using them, you may not. I was using care agencies when I had my fingers badly burnt by a number of care agencies, and they were almost run as a, they were run as a business, and they didn't actually care. I think I found with a few of these, and with that I ended up using private carers, and I'm still friends today with them. But then you're having to take charge of that, and if you're using a care agency and it's working, fantastic. Keep going and enjoy it. Sorry, that's my phone. I'm just going to get rid of that. Do apologise. So yeah, put the feelers out. Ask locally. Ask paid carers. When I found about INS, they did one-to-one physiotherapy in Twickenham. I went, blimey, really? We need a bit of that, because what happened with Neil when he came home after the stroke? Well, they gave him 6 weeks of support, and then they close your file. That's it, done. I mean, Neil was twice my size and weight, and he, you know, I've got that to deal with on my own now. I mean, that's not very caring, is it? Who's supposed to deal with that for years? And it's terrible that you are the one who has to now put the feelers out. But we have to be proactive. We have to be proactive. So don't be beaten or despondent if, you know, one particular charity or whatever, they can't help. Ask them then. If you don't know, if you can't help, do you know anybody else that can? There'll be other charities and supports out there at the moment that you probably don't even know about, that's down the road. Do keep trying.
And I think that kind of, there's a couple of strands to that as well. I think that's come out of how you've just answered that question as well, Sarah. I think one is that very often I think carers kind of battle on themselves and maybe don't seek a support group, or don't think that they would fit in with a support group, or don't think that there's the need for that, while underneath they are gradually diluting who they are as a person as well. And I think on the other hand, you sometimes get the patient, the person, the loved one who has the injury, who also doesn't want to join a support group, doesn't think they would get anything from it, doesn't feel they want to add anything to it, because it's just fanning the flames on, as you said earlier about Neil, fanning the flames on a place that you don't want to be in anyway.
I've been in a number of support groups over the years, as you can imagine, all those years caring, and some were great and some were less so. There was one where there was one woman just taking up all the airtime, and I came out of that and thought, if it doesn't do you any good, if you don't feel great about it afterwards, don't go. If you're coming away from that feeling despondent and worse, then that's not the right support group for you. You know, but I also did counselling, and I didn't think I needed it because I thought I was all right. But through Richmond Carer Centre, maybe through your carer centre, there is counselling is offered, and I thought, really, do I need that? I thought, and apparently it was something like 6 weeks worth or something like that, and I thought, I'll just go to one and see how it is. And you know what? It was greatly beneficial. She would ask me questions I didn't really want to look at or answer. And then I'd take myself off for a walk afterwards, because what they're doing is pressing a few buttons on you to really open up. Because we do put a brave face on. I think the majority of us as carers, we've got to look like we're coping, because, you know, others are ill, they're not in a good place. So you've got to be that support, that pillar of strength. So yeah, it's a tricky one, but you could ask about counselling. try a number of charities for free counselling. There'll be a number of them out there. And I even had a counsellor once Neil was gone on the grieving side of things. Really powerful, actually, and actually really enjoyable. Actually really enjoyed that time spent just chatting about it. Really, really good. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you. I'm conscious we've got 5 minutes left. I can see another little yellow hand up. Jane, would you like to unmute and show your video?
Yeah, hello.
Ask your question.
Hi, Sarah.
Jane.
It's just a quick question. You touched on about when, you know, Neil come out of rehab and stuff, and, you know, there was, you get your 6 sort of weeks, or, you know, your very limited time when all that support's kind of in place. Is that the same system for, say, possibly children that are caring for parents or for loved ones, or is there, you know, is there something else in place that they just assume because obviously you're a grown up and you're older, when you've got a child, like I said, a child, you know, like a 15-year-old or something that's their parent's carer?
Yeah.
Is there more support or easier access to support for those children, for those people?
I know with, like, so for example, Richmond Carers Centre, they also look after the young carers. So they've got all sorts of clubs and activities for them so they can come together and talk about what's going on, because they've had to grow up horribly quickly. They're suddenly an adult, even if you're like 10 or 12 or 15.
Yeah.
That's a really tough one. Or they've just always been with it. It's part of life, isn't it? If they've born into a family where somebody is just disabled, or, you know, then they're not well. I don't know all the answers to that, Jane, I'm afraid, when it comes to young carers. I know that with social services, now there must be different and ongoing support.
System, yeah. I did wonder.
If you're under the age of 18 or 16, something like that, they, you know, it's a really tough one, because whereas we will drum, well, not, or sometimes not.
Exactly, make more of a nuisance of yourself. They may not have the, you know, the know-how or the confidence or just the general life experience to do that.
No, absolutely not. And I think that makes it even more important for young carers to be involved with local carer centres and get themselves along, because then they will learn that what is available. I remember going for a carers assessment, and he said, "What do you want?" I said, "What have you possibly got for me that's going to help me care for a terminally ill husband?" I was actually angry, and he didn't really, you know, because I don't know what's available. So how can I ask for something that I don't know that's there?
Yeah.
They don't offer it on a silver platter, do they? Let's be honest. You've got to go finding it. But I would say for young carers, if you know anybody who's a young carer, get them involved with your local carer centre, definitely, because then they're more likely to open up. They will be suppressing their emotions, those young carers, and that's going to impact their life growing up and forwards as well. You know, for all different things.
And young carers as well. It's not just people up to the age of 16, 18 or something, is it? It can be young carers who are in their 20s, or, you know,
absolutely,
their lives have kind of gone on hold as well, and that's a tough place for somebody.
Yeah, I talked about in my story about Tara, who's got MS now after caring for years for her husband, and their son's caring for him, and he's in his 20s. It's a really difficult one for him, because he wants to go and live abroad, he wants to do all sorts of things, and then there's his mum slowly deteriorating and is pretty much housebound. But as I said to Tara, I speak to her every now and again, I said, you know, he's got to get on with his life. It's his life, and it's now. And whatever happens for you, it's a very tough one, but he's got to go live it. As, you know, whilst he's young, making the most. I know it's hard. It's a terrible thing. It's that horrible dilemma. Damned if you do, damned if you don't. Yeah. But for a young person, I said, come on, live your life, what in any way you can. Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Jane. We have sadly run out of time. I think we could probably sit here all afternoon discussing.
I was going to say, Tony, there's Penny had put one up.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see that.
I'm just going to quickly look at that for 2 seconds. I was interested in the nurse's response, and they'd been expecting you to come to a point that needed help. How is best to approach for us as we try to encourage those caring to recognise their own needs? So it really is about clarity again, Penny. Get it, and it's drip feeding. I think about Linda actually at Richmond Carer Centre. It's drip feeding the information to those who are caring. Sometimes people are not ready to listen. Oh no, that was me as well. Oh no, I'm all right, when I actually wasn't. I think getting them to, say, for example, read this book, but checking in with themselves, asking them how they really feeling, getting them to jot those things down, getting clarity. When did they last have a break? When they're having a break, what are they doing? Are they making the most of that, or just still talking about the issues? As I said, getting away from the situation can help to gain clarity, and asking them, what do you need to do differently? Start to ask those questions to encourage carers to start to think about themselves, because your arrows are all pointing outwards. It's time to point them inwards to you as well. You know, it's a two-way thing. So keep asking. Keep drip feeding that information.
Okay, thank you for that. If anybody wants to post any messages, and I'm so sorry, Penny, I missed that one in the messages. If anybody wants to post anything in the little messages, little bit at the top of the screen, please do. Clearly, we are going to have to wrap up at this point. I would just like to say thank you, a huge thank you, Sarah, for you. I know you've put in a huge amount of work, and we've had a number of discussions leading up to this, and this stuff doesn't just put itself on. There's a lot of stuff that goes into putting this together. So I'd just like to say thank you for everything that you've presented on today. Thank you for the information you've provided, and for sharing an incredible story with such clarity and honesty. And I can't begin to imagine how difficult that must be to do that. But I can only speak for myself. I've benefited hugely from listening to you present, and a big thanks again for that. I'd also would just like to say thank you to Owen Mitchell as well, because without their ongoing support and helping us, and they've attended meetings with Sarah and myself to put this on, this wouldn't have happened today. So huge thank you to them as well. So
thank you for inviting me, and to all of you actually who've come and joined us today. I hope it's been beneficial and helped in any way. Thank you.
I think it's been amazing, and thank you everyone for attending, and we will be in touch. There'll be some links and stuff to go out to people, because there's certain number of things that people are wanting, so we will be back in touch on that. But I think ourselves, Abel and Sarah, are now in touch with each other, and we'll probably be seeing more of each other. And when we get our physical doors open again and run conferences again, Sarah is the top of the list, and very, very welcome to come along to those. So thank you again, Sarah, and thank you everyone for attending.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.